All right, so this one is a wild one. Apparently, Desiree Perez, yeah, the same woman who runs Rock Nation, right hand to Jay-Z, the woman getting Super Bowl halftime show deals, all that, is being sued by her own daughter. And not for some light family drama either. This is full-blown illegal wiretaps, fake arrests, mental institutions, secret cameras in the bedroom, like a real-life, Lifetime movie type of energy is going on with this lawsuit. And like I said, she's being sued by her own daughter, Demery Hadley. I believe I'm saying her name right. Y'all forgive me if I'm not. She says that her mom used her money, lawyers, private investigators, and all the firepower that Rock Nation had just to blow up her relationship and take her husband down. And it's not just talk. Apparently there's receipts, screenshots, police records. She even claims that her mom hacked her phone and had her held under the Baker Act in Florida after telling authorities that her daughter was having a mental breakdown when she wasn't, right? And Desiree Perez is one of these people in the music industry that has a pretty deep backstory. She's not just some random music executive. She's a former drug trafficker turned federal informant who somehow ended up running one of the biggest entertainment empires in the entire country. Trump even gave her a pardon for her crimes back in 2021. Anyways, I got my hands on the actual court docs. And so today we're going to go through them and see exactly what this lawsuit is accusing Desiree Perez of, because this really is truly deeper than just a petty family fight. So let's get into it. So you can see the cover page here. You can see that Desiree Perez's daughter is not only suing Desiree Perez, but Iconic Creator, LLC, Rock Nation, the South Broward Hospital, Odyssey Behavior Healthcare, Life Skills of South Florida Outpatient Center, and even the Broward County Sheriff's Office. And it starts right here by laying out all of the facts. It says one plaintiff, Demery Hadley, was a citizen of the state of Florida and a resident of Miami-Dade County, Florida, which is the Southern District of Florida when this happened. Defendant Desiree Perez, formerly known as Desiree Rosa Gonzalez, Desiree Reynoso, and Desiree Lopez, was a citizen of the state of New Jersey. Defendant Rock Nation was a New York corporation engaged in commercial activity throughout the United States. Defendant Desiree Perez was its chief executive officer. Iconic Creative was a Florida corporation engaged in commercial activity, right? It goes on to just lay out everybody that she's suing and what their role is. They lay out a jurisdiction. I'm not really going to read all that, but right here, they really get into the meat of the case on point 22. It says this case gives meaning to the phrase, "You wouldn't believe it until you see it." Desiree Perez is a former drug trafficker, confidential informant, and convicted felon who is now the CEO of Rock Nation in New York City. Demery Hadley is Desiree's biological daughter. Javon Hadley is Demery's husband. Demery met Javon while they attended Miami Palmetto Senior High School. Demery and Javon have been together for the past 15 years and got married in 2024, and this complaint will refer to them collectively as the Hadleys. For the past 2 years, Desiree has used her money, power, and influence to tear the Hadleys apart. Desiree created an enterprise of individuals to effectuate her plot and used unlawful means to have Javon falsely arrested on 3 different occasions and Demery falsely detained under Florida's Baker Act and Marchman Act statutes. And the Baker Act in Florida is a mental health act. It's a state law that allows for involuntary examination and hospitalization of people who may be mentally ill. Unfortunately, as detailed below, Desiree has a history of using illegal tactics to get her way, even if it requires wearing rubber gloves and providing false information to authorities. Wow, not the picture of Desiree with the rubber gloves on. Damn. It says, in addition to being the CEO of Rock Nation, upon information and belief, Desiree is part owner of the company. Rock Nation was founded in 2008 by music icon Jay-Z and has become one of the most influential entities in the entertainment and sports industry. Rock Nation represents chart-topping musicians, elite athletes, and influential entertainers, including Rihanna, J. Cole, Shakira, Kevin Durant, and Shaquan Barkley. The National Football League, or the NFL, contracts Rock Nation to organize and select performers for the Super Bowl halftime show. Rock Nation also assists artists with creating content for concerts and movies. Desiree, as CEO, has an army of tech staff with access to the best technology that money can buy. She also has a team of attorneys and private investigators at her disposal. Despite her current position, Desiree's background and discreet rise to prominence was highly unusual. Unfortunately, Desiree's past and her abandonment of Demery is the root cause of the current friction between a mother and a daughter. Their relationship is unfortunate, sad, and disheartening. More more disappointing, the relationship could have been repaired through alternative means, but Desiree chose to employ heavy-handed tactics instead. It says Desiree's past as a drug trafficker, confidential informant, fraudster, and fugitive. It says Desiree participated in federal drug trafficking activities in the 1990s under her prior name, Desiree Reynoso. And they've got a screenshot of her charges from back in 1995. It says following Desiree's federal indictment and arrest, she was originally sentenced to 30 months in prison. However, Desiree became a confidential informant and provided information to federal law enforcement, which caused the government to file a motion eliminating her 30-month prison sentence. And it's got a screenshot of that. It says, while engaged in narcotics trafficking activities, Desiree gave birth to Demery in November of 1994. Even after Demery's birth, Desiree continued to engage in criminal conduct. For instance, local law enforcement arrested Desiree in April of 1996 for a slew of fraudulent criminal activity, including organized fraud, grand theft, and several counts of uttering a forged instrument. They got a screenshot of all of those charges. It says when Desiree got arrested on state charges, she had already been sentenced to federal prison but was still out on bond. Her surrender date got delayed to at least August 12, 1996. As shown on her federal probation affidavit, Desiree later fled to New York while on probation to become a fugitive from justice. In March of 1998, New York officials arrested Desiree for grand larceny, criminal use of paraphernalia, and criminal possession of a firearm. Desiree pled guilty in New York State Court, but was only sentenced to a conditional discharge. And they're laying all this out for those wondering to kind of paint the character that Desiree is. She's trying to show, look, my mom is a piece of shit before she gets into her allegations against her mom. Pretty much. It says Desiree was eventually sentenced to 9 months imprisonment for violating federal probation. Choosing a life of crime over motherhood, Desiree dumped her infant daughter Demery on Demery's maternal grandfather, Julio, and his longtime partner, Olga. Growing up, Demery referred to Julio as abuelo and Olga as mommy, which Desiree despises till this day. In 2002, almost fresh out of prison, Desiree somehow became the owner of the 4040 Club in New York. They've got the filing showing that she owns that club, and it says Desiree has mostly remained in the greater New York City area since then and chose money, power, and influence at all costs. To the outside world, it appears that Desiree turned her life around and became a successful CEO, but secretly, Desiree continued to engage in acts exposing herself and others to both civil and criminal liability, which a state prosecutor noted in her closeout memorandum relating to Javon, that's Desiree's daughter's husband's fraudulent arrest. And it's got a screenshot of that closeout memorandum here that says the victim's mother called in a false 911 call in December, which is a crime in and of itself, and reported the victim was getting kidnapped. The victim's mother also petitioned to have the victim Marchman acted, and the victim was Baker acted. The witnesses under oath told ASA Sopina and ASA Farrell, I guess that's the prosecutors for whatever case this was, that the victim does not do drugs or drink. And you can see the prosecutor said that she called in a false 911 call to make this happen. It says, as related to this lawsuit, Desiree conspired with others to illegally record the Hadleys in their bedroom, hack Demery's iPhone, and unlawfully detain the Hadleys on several occasions, which included concocting false evidence against them. Candidly, it's difficult to imagine that a mother would do the acts listed below to their own child, but the screenshots included in this complaint prove otherwise. It says Desiree Perez unlawfully wiretapped her daughter and her daughter's husband's bedroom. Desiree, at an unknown time, conspired with others to surreptitiously plant a camera into the Hadley's bedroom without their knowledge, which existed since at least July 8th, 2022. Desiree literally admitted to this fact in a frivolous lawsuit that she filed against Javon. In her complaint, Desiree even included a snapshot from the illegal recording device in the Hadley's bedroom, and it's got the screenshot here, I guess, of where the camera was placed. And it says, in addition to the illegal camera, Desiree also planted a listening device, picture below, inside their bedroom. And you can see this picture of the listening device here. What's crazy is Desiree is the one that provided the screenshot of the camera in the bedroom in a lawsuit that she filed against her daughter's husband. That's insane. It says, unbeknownst to the Hadleys, Desiree kept both recording devices in their bedroom for years, which is clearly illegal. The prosecutor in Javon's frivolous criminal battery case, which Desiree facilitated, even recognized the illegal act of recording the Hadleys in their bedrooms. So, wow. It says that she also illegally hacked her daughter's iCloud account. It says Desiree also hacked or directed her highly trained technical staff at Rock Nation to hack Demery's iCloud account, giving Desiree unfettered access to Demery's digital data, including text messages, photographs, and videos. Demery has witnessed her mother direct her tech team team at Rock Nation to infiltrate other people's digital data, including an instance where Desiree wanted to determine how a chart-topping artist's upcoming movie got leaked. Demery first realized her mother hacked her iPhone in March 2024. On that day, Javon and Demery's friend, Sergine, called Demery after noticing that Demery's cell phone and Apple Watch were pinging in New York. And they've got a screenshot, I guess, from her friend showing that it was pinging Demery in New York City. Demery's Apple Watch also showed it was located at 538 West 26th Street in New York. Right? They got a screenshot of that. It says when Demery checked her iCloud account on her phone, which she had in her hand in Miami, it showed that iPhone 2 on her account was pinging the Rock Nation's headquarters in New York. And it has a screenshot attached of that as well. The problem is that Demery only had one iPhone device attached to her iCloud account, the one she was literally holding in her hand. Not surprisingly, Desiree's office at Rock Nation is located at 540 West 26th Street. Google Maps shows that 538 West 26th Street, the location appearing on Demery's iCloud account, and 540 West 26th Street, which is Rock Nation's headquarters, are literally part of the same building in New York. And it's got a picture showing the front doors to both of these buildings. It says Demery believes the iPhone 2 device in her iCloud account, which placed her location at Rock Nation in New York, was a device cloned by her mother's team. Again, Demery has personally witnessed her mother order her team to clone a person's iPhone for her access. In Desiree's frivolous lawsuit recently filed against Javon, she somewhat admitted to hacking Demery's phone. Desiree filed screenshots of text messages between Demery and Javon, but failed to adequately explain how she acquired them. And they've got a screenshot of the prosecutor noting the oddity of Desiree's ability to provide private conversations between her daughter and her daughter's husband. It says that Demery was very concerned with the conduct of her family, that she had found a tracker in her luggage and believed she was followed to the SAO. I don't know what that is. When she came in for her pre-file statement, when the victim came into the SAO, an attorney for the witnesses also appeared and inquired with the receptionist as to the whereabouts of Demery. Demery claims her family has hacked her iCloud account and accessed her private data and information. Demery's mother provided the state with a Google Drive of evidence which contained private conversations that Demery had with her husband dating as far back as 2017. As explained below, Desiree used illegal bedroom recordings, stolen iCloud data, and other means during her conspiracy to fraudulently convince people that Demery needed to be unlawfully committed to a mental health institution and drug rehab facility under Florida's Baker Act and Marchman Act statutes. She used the same information to get Javon falsely arrested. It then goes on into Desiree threatened to use the Baker Act against her daughter. It says Desiree's first time threatening to commit wrongfully Demery to a mental health institution occurred on September 14th, 2023. That day, Desiree lured Demery to her home in Pinecrest, Florida, under the false pretenses that Demery's uncle needed to be taken to the hospital, which was untrue. Demery rushed to her mother's home and was confronted by her mom for a quote-unquote intervention. As seen below in the snippet from the police report, Desiree admitted to having an intervention for Demery and that she hired a counselor named Victoria Hunter. And they've got a screenshot of that snippet that pretty much says that. Although Desiree told officers that Victoria Hunter is a therapist, Miss Hunter has never been a licensed therapist in Florida. Desiree convinced Miss Hunter to lie to the police and falsely claim she was a therapist. Demery was not interested in her mother's intervention and demanded to leave. However, Desiree prevented Demery from leaving by confiscating her dog. Desperate to leave, Demery attempted to climb over her mother's security fence. Desiree pulled Demery back and stated, "I am going to Baker Act you if you stay with that N-word with the hard R. I will have you committed." Desiree's statement was not some veiled threat and later came to fruition as explained below. Demery called 911 and requested police assistance in this matter, but her mother, Desiree, flaunted her power as the CEO of Rock Nation and claimed she had Pinecrest police in her pocket. Pinecrest police officers did arrive on the scene and eventually forced Desiree to allow her daughter to leave, but due to her influence, the officers did not press charges against Desiree for false imprisonment. That same day, Desiree showed up to Demery's grandfather's house where the Hadleys were residing, so her and her husband. Desiree confronted Javon and told him, "I know everything that happens with you and Demery. If you stay with her, you're going to get your herself killed based upon Desiree's threats that Hadleys moved out of their grandfather's home in October of 2023 and into a house located in Homestead, Florida. In response, Desiree rented the house directly across the street, pointed a camera towards their home, and ordered private investigators, many who were unlicensed, to stalk and harass them. The investigators who stayed across the street from them worked for CTS Research in New York City. CTS investigators followed the Hadleys 24 hours a day, 7 days a week. Many times, the CTS investigators followed the Hadleys at unsafe distances in their cars, causing them to fear for their safety while driving. On one occasion, a CTS investigator who was unlicensed had a gun laying on the front seat while following Javon. Below is a camera that was used by these investigators to record their house, and you can see the picture of the window with the little camera right there in the corner. It also says that Desiree conspired with Demarie's employer, Iconic Creative LLC. It says after her first plot failed, Desiree upped the stakes to have Demarie committed. Since January of 2021, Demarie worked for a creative agency in Miami called Iconic Creatives LLC. Of course, Iconic often worked events for Rock Nation and its artists. For 2.5 years, Demarie's salary at Iconic was approximately $65,000 a year, and the company was in financial distress. A fact the owners shared with Demarie. They sent this message that said, "So we are dealing with a lot. We're in a bad place. $45,000." Yesterday, the photographer from Zion in New Orleans was not paid either. $14,000. AJ has not been paid in months. It says, but in October of 2023, right after Desiree threatened to Baker Act her daughter if she didn't leave her husband, Demarie received a salary increase from $65,000 to $125,000. Upon information and belief, Desiree stepped in and helped resolve Iconic's financial problems with strings attached, i.e. controlling Demarie. Demarie found it odd because she knew about the company's financial situation. She was also ecstatic about her pay increase, of course, but little did she know what was to come. Suddenly, Iconic began asking Demarie to stay late, working longer hours, and to frequently travel. While some of the demands made sense at the time because of the pay increase, Demarie did not realize that a nefarious plot was on the way, i.e. a plot to split up her and her husband. On December 12, 2023, Elizabeth Liz Fragella and Benigo Benny Fragella, the owners of Iconic, texted Demarie stating that she was required to attend a meeting with the Nike Academy the following day. And they sent this message right here. When Demarie signed into Zoom, only one person was in the room, Rachel Thomas. And Demarie says she found this odd because every other training or meeting that they had with the Nike Academy consisted of at least 20 people. Rachel Thomas signed on to Zoom and identified herself as a representative from the Nike Academy. Rachel then began asking Demarie questions that were unrelated to work. Demarie, suspicious of Rachel's intent, asked Rachel if she could record the conversation, and Rachel consented. Demarie recorded the conversation and took a screenshot of Rachel. Rachel proceeded to give Demarie a quasi-psychological evaluation without Demarie's approval or consent. Upon information and belief, Desiree conspired with Liz and Benny, the owners of Iconic, to have Demarie undergo a mental health evaluation with Rachel. After the quote-unquote training, Demarie asked for Rachel's Nike Academy profile, and Rachel agreed to provide it, but did not do so immediately, probably because it had not been created. A few days later, Demarie received a fake link showing Rachel's false affiliation with the Nike Academy. Upon information and belief, Desiree and Liz or Benny asked someone to create the fraudulent website. The website was later deleted, and Liz and Benny realized that Demarie was becoming suspicious. Liz and Benny required Demarie to attend 2 other quote-unquote training sessions with Rachel Thomas. The last one occurred right before Christmas. At that time, Demarie did not know Rachel's true identity, but in reality, Rachel Thomas was really a woman named Rachel Bernstein. Rachel Bernstein is a licensed marriage and family therapist from California who specializes in sexual occult and has a podcast on sexual occult recovery. Damn, that's crazy. So they got her profile right here showing that that's what she does. It says, upon information and belief, this was just a ploy by Desiree to have Demarie improperly evaluated. Suffice it to say, Rachel Bernstein was never associated with the Nike Academy when Demarie was attending these training sessions. It says Desiree immediately conspired to have Javon arrested. On December 26, 2023, less than a week after the forced sessions with Rachel failed, Desiree reported to Miami-Dade police that Javon battered Demarie on January 16, 2022, almost 2 years prior. On December 29, 2023, officers responded to the Hadleys' home to speak with Javon. Demarie answered the door and told the officers that nothing happened on January 16, 2022, and directed the police to leave if they did not have a warrant. The next day, December 30th, 2023, Desiree ordered private investigators to follow the Hadleys to Pinto Farms in Homestead, Florida. While the Hadleys were enjoying Pinto Farms with their nephew, Desiree falsely reported to 911 that Javon had kidnapped Demery and was holding her hostage, and they got a screenshot from the police officer that says he was dispatched in emergency mode to the Pinto farm in response to this. It says, as shown in the screenshot below, Desiree's allegations were completely false. Demery was hardly being abducted and was spending quality time with her soon-to-be husband and nephews, and they got this picture there showing them having a good time while they were out there. It says, the state's attorney's office documented Desiree's criminal activity of falsely reporting a crime in their closeout memorandum. The prosecutor stated the victim's mother called in a false 911 call in December, which is a crime in and of itself, and reported the victim was getting kidnapped. It says when the officers arrived on scene, they quickly realized Desiree lied to the police as recognized by the state's attorney's office. However, Desiree had already conspired with high-ranking members of the police department and others to falsely arrest Javon for the January 2022 alleged battery. Although the prosecutor ultimately dropped the charges against Javon, he was embarrassed that the police arrested him in front of his nephews. Desiree avoided any charges for falsely reporting this kidnapping. Approximately 1 week after Javon was released on bond from his fraudulent arrest on December 30th, 2023, Iconic fired Demery without any explanation. And they got this message right here from Iconic, and it says that basically they believe Desiree demanded that Liz and Benny fire her daughter. Again, Iconic has a large contract with Roc Nation and its artists, and they believe that Desiree stepped in to help them financially. In addition to firing Demery, Iconic refused to pay her for the weeks she had already worked in December of 2023. Demery was told that in order to receive payment for the week she worked, she had to sign what was essentially a gag order entitled a separation of release, which precluded her from reporting Iconic's behavior to Nike. This was obviously illegal. Demery had threatened legal action to get paid for the time she had already worked. So it says that at this point, Desiree hired an attorney for Demery. It says that same week, Desiree hired an attorney named Brent Schwartz to improperly influence Javon's misdemeanor battery case. On January 8, 2024, Brent Schwartz filed a notice of appearance purporting to represent Demery when Desiree actually hired him for her own interests. They got a copy of that he filed. It says, to be clear, Demery never hired Brett Schwartz, nor has she ever talked to him. Nevertheless, Brett Schwartz filed a fraudulent notice of appearance, which caused the prosecutor in Javon's case to reach out to him. And I guess they sent this email right here. It says, ultimately, this was not the only occasion that Desiree hired lawyers who pretended as if they were representing Demery, as explained below. It says, at Desiree's direction, Brett Schwartz tried to convince prosecutors to charge Javon with human trafficking, although there was no legal basis to do so. The excerpt below was taken from an email that Brett Schwartz sent to the prosecutor in Javon's misdemeanor battery case, and that email said, as a result of this arduous history of manipulation, I will be reaching out to prosecutor Nicholas Chavez or prosecutor Brenda Mesrick, who is the chief of the human trafficking unit, to request they investigate and pursue felony charges against Mr. Hadley for human trafficking. At the very least, both have been copied. It says there was absolutely no basis for anyone to pursue felony charges against Javon from human trafficking. Desiree was simply using her money, power, and influence to prevent the Hadleys from being together. Desiree even contacted the prosecutor directly using her Roc Nation business email. After the prosecutor told Desiree and Brett that she could not charge Javon, Desiree asked the prosecutor to improperly extend the case. Desiree wanted to keep Javon on edge. And they got this message right here that she sent that said, right, perhaps even postponing and saying they are investigating whatever they feel they can say so that he at least stays on edge. Unfortunately, the prosecutors agreed to Desiree's demand for more time, which ultimately allowed her to continue to wreak havoc on the Hadleys. It says Desiree did just that. And it's got this right here, Desiree's third attempt at a mental health evaluation. On March 26, 2024, after the intervention with Victoria Hunter and training with Rachel Bernstein failed, Desiree directed Natalie Anderson, a Roc Nation employee, to confront Demery's therapist, Dr. Luz Barrio, who Demery was seeing for grief counseling after her aunt died. Natalie Anderson presented Dr. Barrio with a fabricated audio recording of a woman screaming, "Don't R-word me." At Desiree's direction, Miss Anderson falsely claimed the recording was Javon doing that to Demery. Desiree wanted Dr. Barrio to believe that Demery had some type of mental health issue in order to capitalize on her threat to Baker Act her. Since Dr. Barrio was intimately familiar with Demery and had seen her on countless occasions, she knew that Demery had never been a threat to herself or others, was not in danger, and did not meet the Baker Act criteria. Dr. Barrio refused to do Desiree's dirty work. After learning about Demery's false Baker Act explained below, Dr. Barrio wrote a letter disputing Demery's supposed need for treatment or hospitalizations. They got a copy of that note here. It says, I have been working with Ms. Demery Lopez since July of 2022, providing individual sessions throughout our therapeutic work. There's been no evidence of visual, auditory, or tactical hallucinations. She has consistently presented as intelligent and coherent. In addition, throughout our clinical work, I have not found reason to recommend hospitalization due to any suspected thought disorder. And then it gets into Desiree's fourth and successful attempt to unlawfully detain Demery on March 27, 2024, after striking out with Dr. Barrio, Victoria Hunter, and Rachel Bernstein, and Desiree conspired with and likely paid Dr. Daniel Bobber, who works at Memorial Regional Hospital, a state-run facility, to wrongfully commit Demery to a mental health facility under Florida's Baker Act. It says Desiree and her co-conspirators' plan is sickening. Desiree hired private investigators Steve Caddy, Jessica Caddy, and James Fondo, all owners of Sig9 LLC, to lure Demery to a marina in Dania Beach. One of the Sig9 LLC investigators called Demery, pretending to be a property owner who wanted to hire the Hadley's landscaping company. Sig9 LLC placed a GPS tracker on Demery's car to follow her movements, a fact that James Fondo later admitted to police on camera. And James Fondo is one of the investigators. It says when Demery got close to the marina for the business meeting, James Fondo, a former police officer, asked the police to respond on the side of the road near the marina, and they got some footage from some body cam here. It says 2 officers from the Broward County Sheriff's Office arrived at approximately 5:40 p.m. James Fondo told the officers that Dr. Bobber, who was waiting at the marina, was going to Baker Act Demery. It's important to note that James Fondo said Dr. Bomber is going to Baker Act Demery, even before he had ever met her. In other words, Dr. Bobber had no factual basis to initiate a Baker Act because he had never evaluated Demery beforehand. At that point, he had not even seen her in person. But since Desiree hired, conspired, and paid Dr. Bobber to commit Demery under the Baker Act statute, he was going to do exactly just that, no matter the circumstances. When Demery arrived at the marina, James Fondo, Stephen, and Jessica Caddy, along with Dr. Bobber and the police, confronted her. They've got another screenshot here from the body cam of them doing that. It says the Sig9 owners pretended to be part of an unspecified mobile crisis unit that worked with Dr. Bobber, which was a lie. Demery repeatedly told the police that she had never met Dr. Bobber before, that he was not her doctor, and that her mother conspired with Dr. Bobber to Baker Act her. Demery even called her own doctor, Dr. Barrio, and begged the police to speak with her, but police refused. The police then forced Demery to go with 3 complete strangers in a dark gray truck with no hospital, police, or mental health facility insignia on it. The police never even verified the identity of any of the individuals on the scene to confirm that they belonged to a mobile crisis unit. They just took the word of 3 fraudsters in a gray pickup truck. Frankly, the body-worn camera footage is disgusting and difficult to watch. Equally disturbing, Dr. Bobber wrote on the intake form that he personally examined Demery on March 27, 2024, and I got proof of that right below that. It says, but his statement is bogus because at 5:56 p.m., body-worn camera footage shows Dr. Bobber leaning against the truck parked in the marina talking to the police. It is doubtful that any doctor has ever conducted a legitimate psychological evaluation under such circumstances. Dr. Bobber's license to practice medicine should be terminated. When Demery arrived at Memorial Hospital on March 27, 2024, the first doctor examined her at 6:21 p.m., noting that she was alert, oriented to person, place, and time, and that her behavior was normal. And they've got a screenshot of that. Nurses also noted that Demery was cooperative and accused Dr. Bobber of colluding with her mother, which is consistent with the body-worn camera footage in this case. Reading between the lines, the hospital staff was clearly concerned about Dr. Bobber's decision to detain Demery for an involuntary examination and documented her side of the story. Nevertheless, Dr. Bobber falsely reported that Demery required intensive, comprehensive, multimodal treatment, including 24-hour medical supervision, which is something that none of his colleagues at the hospital noted. Dr. Bobber even directed staff to medicate Demery with Benadryl. In the screenshot above, Dr. Bobber wrote, If patient refuses PO, give IM, which essentially means that if Demery refused Benadryl, then force it upon her through an intermuscular injection or a shot. Dr. Bobber wrote false information in his report to keep Demery detained and Desiree happy. Dr. Bobber even admitted speaking to Desiree on the body-worn camera footage. Important to the issue below, Memorial Regional tested Demery for drugs on March 27, 2024, which came back negative for everything. Nevertheless, Dr. Bobber conspired with Desiree to commit Demery to a Life Skills South Florida outpatient facility, which is a drug treatment facility where he is the medical director. Life Skills is owned by or affiliated with Odyssey Behavioral Healthcare. And you can see right here, they got a screenshot showing that he is the medical director of this place. It says on March 29, 2024, despite Demery's normal behavior and negative drug test, Desiree filed an emergency ex parte petition under Florida's Marchman Act, claiming that Demery suffered from a drug and alcohol condition, something that both she and Dr. Bobber knew was untrue. Demery has never done drugs in her life, it says. Got a screenshot of that emergency ex parte petition. It says Desiree specifically requested for Demery to be transferred from Memorial Hospital to Life Skills so that she and Dr. Bobber could continue Demery's unlawful detention. And then they got a screenshot of them requesting that she be moved there. It says, perhaps most disturbing, Desiree also moved for guardianship over Demery on March 29, 2024, claiming that her 30-year-old, highly educated daughter who never touched an illegal drug in her life was incapacitated. Desiree blatantly lied in her guardianship petition, claiming that Demery was asking friends and family to share prescription pain pills with her. Desiree listed Liz Fergella as one of the people Demery supposedly asked for pills, the same Liz who Desiree used during the second fraudulent Baker Act and who was financially indebted to Desiree for saving her company. Demery has all her text messages with Liz, and the messages show that Demery never asked Liz for any illegal drugs or pills. Desiree also listed Milides Garcia as a person Demery sought out for drugs, but when Millie was placed under oath by the state's attorney office, she admitted that Demery does not do drugs or drink. Millie was the caretaker for Demery's grandfather and was frequently in Demery's presence. Minerva also never accused Demery of using drugs. Moreover, Desiree filed the petition on March 29, 2024. Demery stopped communicating with her mom long beforehand. Desiree made blatant misrepresentations to the court again. And then it says here that Demery was transferred to Life Skills. Since Desiree concocted a fraudulent ex parte Marchman Act petition, Demery was transported to Life Skills on March 30, 2024. While at Life Skills, Demery repeatedly asked to be examined by someone other than Dr. Bobber, but they initially refused. But unbiased professionals began to realize Demery did not belong there. The staff wrote that Demery was not delusional, speech was normal, there was no hallucinations, and that her thought process was intact. They also noted that Demery was always positive. Nevertheless, Life Skills required Demery to undergo treatment for an addiction she did not have. Demery begged to take a hair follicle test. Eventually, a worker at Life Skills did this on April 3rd, 2024. Not surprisingly, Demery's hair follicle test, which detects drug use for at least 90 days prior, showed no drugs had been in Demery's system. And they've got a copy of the lab report there. It says Life Skills still did not allow her to leave after 2 negative drug tests. Then it gets into Javon's second fraudulent arrest, because remember, Desiree Perez, CEO of Rock Nation, is also having her daughter's husband arrested. It says on April 5th, 2024, while Demery was at Life Skills, Desiree conspired with others and government officials to get Javon arrested for alleged battery that occurred on September 11, 2023. This was another ploy by Desiree and her co-conspirators because in a meeting in January 2024, just months earlier, the state told Desiree and her team that no probable cause existed to arrest Javon for the September 11th, 2023 alleged incident. But as reflected in the state's closeout memo, Desiree eventually hired a team to try to get what she wanted. And they've got a screenshot of her doing that. It says, despite the frivolity of his arrest, as recognized by the state, Javon was initially ordered to stay away from Demery. Desiree capitalized on Javon's wrongful arrest and was not finished terrorizing the Hadleys yet. She did this again. It says on April 8th, 2024, as Demery was about to be released from Life Skills, Desiree conspired with others to get Javon falsely arrested again for allegedly violating the stay away order related to the April 5th fraudulent arrest. It says this was was another bogus event captured on body-worn cameras. That day, Javon responded to his home to feed his cat. DeMarie was still in custody under the Fraudulent Marchment Act petition, but was set to be released later that day. Desiree's private investigators who were monitoring Javon contacted the police and told them that Javon was at the house. The body-worn camera footage captures officers speaking with their supervisor about this case. The officers admitted that the higher-ups directed them to arrest Javon. This nefarious act was also addressed in the state's close-out memo. After Desiree caused the police to wrongfully arrest Javon the third time, DeMarie was released from life skills, and it says Desiree reign of terror continues. DeMarie immediately reported to the prosecutors that Desiree was using her power, influence, and money to keep them apart. The state asked DeMarie to give them a sworn statement in their office on April 26, 2024. When DeMarie arrived, the receptionist instructed her to sit in a waiting room. While waiting for the prosecutor, DeMarie saw Laura Gatz, an attorney who supposedly represented the witness in Javon's case, walk in and speak with the receptionist. Laura Gatz was really hired by Desiree. Laura Gatz asked the receptionist, "Has DeMarie Lopez arrived yet?" She is supposed to be meeting with the ASA or the prosecutor at 9 a.m. Laura Gatz did not see Desiree sitting in the waiting room. It says the receptionist asked Laura Gatz who she was, and Laura identified herself as DeMarie's attorney and the witness. The receptionist told Laura Gatz that DeMarie was inside the waiting room and asked her if she wanted to sit with her client. Laura Gatz, knowing that she did not represent DeMarie, said that she would just wait outside. DeMarie believes that her mother instructed Laura Gatz to respond to the prosecutor's office to intimidate DeMarie. This was the second time that attorneys hired by Desiree falsely claimed they represented DeMarie. Eventually, the prosecutor dropped all charges against Javon and wrote a scathing 11-page close-out memorandum explaining Desiree and her co-conspirators' unlawful and inappropriate actions. And it goes on to say that Desiree has actually sued her daughter before. It says on April 22nd, 2024, Desiree filed a frivolous lawsuit against DeMarie. In that case, DeMarie's mom and stepfather, Desiree's husband, surprised DeMarie with a new car in December 2020, which they put in DeMarie's name. Desiree claimed she was the lawful owner of this car, which was false. Title to the car had always been in DeMarie's name. Desiree claimed she had a mutual agreement where DeMarie was granted use of the vehicle with the understanding that it would not be disposed of without Desiree's permission. This too was false. Desiree claimed that DeMarie wrongfully asserted control over the vehicle, causing harm to Desiree. A brief reading of the lawsuit shows how low Desiree will stoop to get what she wants. Recently, Desiree filed a separate lawsuit against Javon, claiming that he violated her right to privacy in a home that she does not live in and only entered 3 times in the last 4 years. In fact, Javon and DeMarie actually lived in the house that Desiree somehow claimed a right to privacy in. That lawsuit is also frivolous and only intended to harass the Hadleys. DeMarie and Javon have spent a large amount of money on lawyers to escape her unlawful detentions and lost out on countless job opportunities. They have suffered economic and non-economic damages from Desiree's acts and others, including lost wages, emotional distress, pain and suffering, and etc. The lawsuit follows, and Desiree's conduct must cease. So they're accusing her of violating the Racketeered Influence and Corrupt Organization Act because of the controlling behavior that she's exhibited. They are accusing them of a civil conspiracy underneath Florida law, and by them I mean Desiree Perez, Rock Nation, and this Natalie Anderson woman. They are claiming a civil conspiracy under Florida law against Desiree Perez, Sig-9, the Dr. Daniel Barber, the investigators for Sig-9, and a Fourth Amendment violation. The Fourth Amendment is your constitutional right to not be unreasonably searched or have things seized by the government. At the end of it, they demand for a jury trial in this case, and so that's what we got. That's the document. This is a bombshell lawsuit against Rock Nation, Desiree Perez, where it's coming directly from her daughter. This is a wild story, y'all. I cannot lie. Probably one of the wildest I've read on this channel, but man, at this point, I've been reading for a minute, so it's y'all's turn to let me know what y'all think about it in the comments down below. Don't forget to hit the like button, subscribe, tap the notification bell if you enjoyed the content so that you get notified every time I upload a video. And as always, man, it's been fun rocking with y'all. I'm out.